You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 571, our continuing coverage of the High Republic comic, Phase 3 by Cavan Scott. Tonight, we're going to be covering issues 5 through 7. It's been a while since we covered the first first four, I should say. I didn't realize that. And it looks like we've got at least one more show after this to kind of wrap things up. And I gotta say, and I'll bring Lauren on to kind of talk about this too, because I want her to hear this. But Lauren, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Like you're saying, I'm excited to talk about these comics because they've just been such a joy to read.
Yeah, and we were talking before we came on air, like the comics, after all the vitriol and all the emotional highs and lows over the last week with the fallout of the Acolyte, this has been very refreshing to go back to, right? Characters that I really love. I know there's a future in with them. The storylines are great. The writing is great. I've got Lorna D on the good side. I mean, it doesn't get any better for me personally than covering these comics. And so this is a very refreshing episode, at least for me personally, because I kind of needed this. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. All right. So before we get into all that, I want to say thank you to everybody that's joined us already for the live stream. And want to say also thank you to all of our Patreon members, especially our, This Is the Way tier. And also our now part of the tribe members. Let me get to them first. So Alex, Raphael, Danny, Mike, Borda, Lauren, Dante, Riss Bayless, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh C, Jacob, Reader, and Reader Reborn, who's, I don't know that he's on the chat. No, not yet. And also our Delusions of Grandeur members, which is Rod Racing, CJ, and Steve. If you guys are interested in Patreon, you can head out to cantinacast.com/Patreon. Sign up there, get a whole back catalog of a ton of episodes that we've done that have been Patreon exclusives. To plug the show we've got coming up this weekend for Patreon members, we are going to do our top 3 moments of the Acolyte, something to cleanse the palate, weed out and smoke out all those bad emotions. We're going to talk about our top 3 things from season 1, or the only season, I guess, at this point. And if you're interested, we've already kind of solicited some Patreon members to join us. So that'll be a fact poi, and we'll do some honorable mentions too. So that should be a lot of fun, kind of reminiscing about the really good stuff that happened in the Acolyte. Also, this Thursday, in just a couple days here, Jonesy and I are going to be back to do another Acolyte show, and it's going to be about the legacy of the Acolyte. And so what I mean by that is really about, what came out of the season that we know is going to spur into other books and content, right? The legacy of it, what does it leave behind? What is it giving us fruit for later down the road? And so there are a lot of things in there that came out of the Acolyte that were, I wouldn't say necessarily lore changing, and I mean that in the best way, positive, but there were certainly some things in there that made us rethink a lot of things about the Jedi, or the Coruscant and the Senate and the Republic itself, and Sith and how they have relationships and all that great stuff. We're going to dig into that and really kind of talk about that on Thursday. So I think that's everything that we've got coming up here. Let's get into talking about these these next issues, 5 through 7. So I guess, Lauren, we've obviously covered the first 4. The fifth issue that we're going to cover, the first one here, is the continuation of the first arc, and then the next 2 are the beginning of this second arc that we're going into. But I guess just overall thoughts on how you felt going back and revisiting these 3 comics that, almost came out 6 months ago.
I really enjoyed it, and I also really like the direction that the series is going into. So all of that has me really excited. I like it that we're, as you mentioned earlier, we're reconnecting with some characters that we know and love, one of which was a surprise to me. So I'm excited to talk about that character from Phase 2, because that made me super excited. And also kind of like seeing a different side to some characters, like especially Lorna D. So that's super fun. And I mean, that's I think what makes this comic so great is you get to get a little bit of all your favorite characters, or at least a lot of your favorite characters. So that was really nice. I will say though, as I was reading this, one thing I was thinking to myself is if I tried to read this and I hadn't read any other High Republic novels, I might be a
Mm.
little bit lost. I don't know if you had that experience or not, but
Oh yeah, for sure. Like you're in the knee thick of things, honestly, with this one, this particular arc, especially.
yes. So definitely read the novels if you're interested in the comic, because otherwise you might be kind of like, what are they talking about? So, because, in a comic, you don't have time to explain every little thing.
Yeah,
So that's just
yeah.
kind of part of it. But I do like how they're so connected in this phase. And it feels like they're just getting even more connected as time goes on. So that's been really fun.
Yeah, and I think with Cavan Scott, like he's very similar to like DJO, where they've got their kind of core group of characters, and some of the things that are happening are references to other material that they've done and written. There's a particular one, and I don't remember if this is in issue 6 or 7, but there's a throwback callback to something that happened in Dooku Jedi Lost, with the bandages of the Luminous, right? We hadn't heard that or seen that in forever. And it was just kind of one of those things that was a really cool moment in that audio drama. And then here it goes, it reemerges itself in this particular comic. And you see lots of that. There's a lot of Easter eggs. So on top of the lore, like you're talking about, and the stuff that you kind of have to know to really contextualize what's happening, there are lots of little Easter eggs and little things that have been slipped in here from Cavan Scott that are primarily from his works, but then other works as well. And so, yeah, it is kind of its own little universe in that way. And so it is kind of fun, especially if you're keeping up with it all. But yeah, I would agree. Like if you're not, and you can probably still enjoy the comic, but we're so far into this at this point that you almost kind of have to, be up to date on exactly what's going on. One Up versus CPU says it looks like the auto drama is going to continue that series too. Yeah, we'll get to that, I guess, in the next episode. But this whole series is kind of, at least this particular wave for Phase 3 of the High Republic has come to an end officially, and it does leave that last issue, which is great. I want to talk about it now, but we can't. But that last issue does say, everything's going to come back in Tempest Breaker, and Phase 3, or the next phase of the High Republic, will come in 2025. So we got a bit of period here before we get back to this, but hopefully we'll be able to get you guys the next series of this pretty soon. And Skywalker's Academy says that's why there's pictures. A picture's worth 1,000 words. Funny you should bring that up, because we have some pictures to go along with this. And so I can't get everything on here because we're not allowed to really legally. So I try to grab just some high level pictures and some stuff to kind of have in front of us while we're talking about each of these issues. So this is the cover for episode 5. And just to kind of recap, I mean, we left off where Keeve finally found Sskeer, and he's suffering from that disease. He's been in this temple. We're not exactly sure why he's been there, how long he's been there. He's definitely not himself. And you can see here in the very first part here, we open up on that ruins of Tander where he's been. Again, they are in the inclusion zone, so they're trapped behind everything as well. And I love this, like, especially, I don't want to talk too, well, we can if we want to, but the artwork is really, really cool. Very nice. I love the way he looks, just like this menacing terror, like the monster that he is. And he's brandishing a lightsaber, which happens to be the second half of Keeve Trennis's lightsaber, which she gave him, a while back. So, you've got a former Jedi, still Force sensitive. Well, I think at this point you still think he is. Not in his right state of mind. He's suffering from that Magrak syndrome, which is something that Trandoshans get, and it kind of drives him. It makes him more feral. It kind of takes them back to their original roots of being really feral kind of creatures. And I just love the way he's drawn. Like, he's so over the top. He's very big, bulky. He looks almost like the Abomination from Marvel Comics, if you guys follow those. But yeah, what did you think about seeing Sskeer, I guess, in this form and throughout this first issue here, especially in issue 5, because it is a little jarring, I think. Given what we know.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I believe it's the issue right before this one, if you contrast this image with, which I know we're not talking about issue 4, but just briefly, there's a picture of him in his Jedi outfit, and he's holding a little baby deer. And
Oh yeah.
it's also like a full page picture,
Yeah.
kind of a similar composition to this one. So I really like the contrast of, this is who he is when he's in the light and he's doing well and he's, living his full potential. And this is who he is when he's at his lowest, unfortunately, because of something he really can't even control,
Yeah.
even though you can tell that he's trying later on in this issue. So
Yeah. Yeah. And not only is Keeve with here also, but Lorna D is right behind. And just to kind of talk about this, I just want to let's talk about Lorna D really quick. I know we've already talked about. I've already spoiled the fact that she is quote on the good side. We saw that coming, right? I mean, you saw it coming a mile away, especially when Tempest Runner had come out. That was the first eye opener. In fact, I think when we broke down Tempest Runner, I remember going in and doing the breakdown and saying literally like, "Holy crap, she is on the path to the good side." And I wasn't going to go too far and say she was going to be, come over fully to the light, but there was definitely signs in there that she had a softer side, especially when we got the backstory on her, right? All the relationships she had. She had some encounters with some Jedi, some very famous Jedi. I think it was Opal Rancisis, I think is who she met and kind of took her under her wing there for a little bit. But I was very excited to see this trajectory that she's been on, because she's another one of these characters, like, I hate to say Asajj Ventress, but that's kind of, in that same similar vein where, she's been betrayed and then she's come back over to the light side, and maybe not fully, but she had some of the best lines in all of these comics. Like, she is the comic relief. And later on, we get a very sweet moment with her and a child. And I have that visual because I remember seeing that, seeing that contrast, that juxtaposition of who she is by issue 7, where she came from back all the way, in phase 1 of the High Republic. So I guess your thoughts on Lorna D. Are you liking her character progression and the development of it all, or do you still want her to be the nasty character? And do you believe it? Do you think she really has kind of turned a leaf, maybe even just slightly at this point?
I want everybody to go back to the light, I feel like. So I do like it that she's kind of becoming a good guy. I will say I was surprised. I mean, it's like you said, there were signs, but I was surprised the level with which we are seeing it happen already. Like, I don't know if I was fully expecting her to, like, at one point she jokingly refers to the Jedi as friends, which, it's a joke, but there's a little bit of truth behind every joke kind of thing, Like, I don't think I would have expected that. I think I would have predicted, oh, maybe she'll leave the Jedi alone. Maybe she won't kill Jedi. But I don't think I ever expected her to, like, call them her friends, So I really liked that, and I liked how we're seeing that softer side come out even more, and it's getting stronger as time is going on. So that has me excited for where this character is going, because for me, I mean, I like it when people, when characters turn from the bad ways. So yeah, I'm definitely excited about that.
Yeah. We'll get to that scene here. I think in the context of it all, I think she was probably doing it more for the kid. And I mean, she was really struggling to say it. I think she even said, I can't believe I'm actually going to say this, friends or something. I'm paraphrasing what she said. I mean, she was struggling to say the F word, given everything that she's been through at that point. But yeah, good point. Rafi Shoots is on with us. Hey man, says, I know it's a long shot, but do you think the situation with Sskeer and how the Jedi Council manages his behavior is what provokes that Keeve leave? Yeah, his behavior, what provokes that Keeve leave the Jedi Order. So is the situation here a reason for the reason why Keeve leaves the Jedi Order? I think it's possible. I always read, with the way, at least the way Yoda came across when he's talking about Keeve Trennis and leaving, it seemed like it was more solemn and almost sad. There was a lot of sadness to it, and it could be this. It could be as simple as this. But my interpretation, at least in my head canon, was either she did something really horrible for the right reason and decided to leave, or she just had if you want to go down this path, yeah, I don't know that. I mean, Sskeer's done some pretty terrible things. And, at the very end of this, he's wearing a freaking Sith artifact, right? Not to spoil anything, because we'll get into it at some point, but he's done a lot of dark things, and he's going to probably have to be held accountable. And yeah, I think that's going to rub Keeve Trennis the wrong way, because she is sticking her neck out for him time and time and time again. We're starting off with this to kind of bring it back to this issue. Lorna D is like, we got to get out of here. And she's like, no, I'm not going away. I'm not leaving. This is who I came for. This is, who she came for. what she came for, and she's never going to ever turn her back on him as her master. And we get moments like that, and we understand why. I mean, the next panel I've got here at one point, when she's trying to tell Lorna D that this is why she doesn't want to leave, she's thinking back to memories like this, right, where you can see Sskeer here and her as a young Padawan, and she's actually, tears are coming to her eyes, and and then the next panel shows her and Sskeer and Keeve a little bit older. So yeah, I think it's possible. I think there's a lot of mystery out there, and I don't know when we'll actually know. But I guess you have any thoughts on what if this is one of the reasons, or if this is the reason that Keeve Trennis leaves the Jedi Order and becomes one of the Lost 20?
I could definitely see it as part of it, because we do see some examples in this issue of people being like, this guy's dangerous. And she's like not agreeing with what they're saying. And she gets very defensive, even when the people that are involved in this issue, they're really not. I mean, they're there helping her, so they're not that against Sskeer, but she's getting very defensive of him. So I could see that if somebody really genuinely came and called his fitness of being a Jedi into question, I could see her really not being okay with that and really taking a stand on that.
Yeah, definitely there. One Up says Lorna's story is very pro wrestling, and just like when Babyface trusts Randy Orton. I'm not a wrestling person, but I get where he's coming from. They're going to get stabbed in the back. Yeah. So far she hasn't done it yet, but I wouldn't put it past her either. I mean, as much as she's playing nicely right now and seems to be, the trajectory seems to be going towards the light, she could just as easily turn on everybody for herself, right?
I could see if she got in a sticky situation. Yeah.
If it's me or you, it's
mm-hmm.
me all the way for Lorna D. That's just who she is. Alex is just dropping by. Hey, man, thanks for stopping by. Okay, let's go to the next one. And so, you can see Sskeer right there. I mean, he's like foaming from the mouth and everything else. And so he's really not of the right mind at this point. He ends up lunging at Keeve, and they lock sabers, and we're going to take our first break away from that. And so we switch back over to the Nurni jungle. And so we're catching up now with Oberlin, who's still alive. Love that guy. You've got Tarek, Sarek, and Gunshal Munshi. And their ship has just been sabotaged. They know there's a Nameless around there. They know there's a Child of the Storm as well in the area. And Munshi can feel the presence of the Nameless. And throughout the rest of this part, I mean, there's points when they feel like it's the Nameless, but it's hard to tell because of that Child of the Storm, which we'll get to in just a moment. Hatar, she has the ability to create illusions as well. So throughout this, you're not really sure if it's Hatar versus actually the Nameless or a bad dream. I love that little dynamic. I loved kind of being kept on my toes the entire time. I thought that was really kind of brilliant in terms of what Cavan Scott was doing.
And Sarah and Tarek being twins throws a whole nother wrench into that too.
Oh yeah,
because you're like, am I looking at Tarek or Sarah right now?
I think that's the point too. Like to some extent, you're trying to like. I had to just at one point just say, okay, forget it. It really doesn't matter at this point because they keep saying, oh, we're one mind, and that's they share the same feelings and the same thoughts, and but it can be very confusing. Like I'm even looking for details on their costumes, like to just something to distinguish the one from the
Right.
other, and it's kind of difficult at times, but not necessarily feedback. That's just been the way it's been, honestly, for this entire series ever since they were introduced.
It
So nothing's
feels
changed.
deliberate. Yeah, it does seem to be deliberate on the author's part. It's just funny when you're trying. First, we have nightmares going on, and we have twins, and it's like, okay, we gotta untangle all this.
Yeah. There's a point in here where Tarek has got like this small creature on his shoulder, and I don't think I have the panel here, but it gets knocked off, and so Tarek decides to he runs out into the woods to kind of chase and find his little creature, and that's what you kind of see right here. This is all for a reason, because eventually as he gets out into the woods, he gets so far out into the woods that he kind of gets lost, and he starts having illusions, and the first illusion that comes to him is just being surrounded by Drengir. Again, when you read this and you don't know until the end of this issue, you're thinking, oh my God, the Drengir are back. And it's always cool to see them back. I love the Drengir. I know we got him in Temptation of the Force, a small amount in Temptation of the Force, but I do miss them in a lot of ways. But while he's out here, he hears a voice say, poor little Jedi, so lost and alone. But that's what you want, isn't it? To be alone. your own being, your own mind. The children of the storm can make that happen, Tarek. Fix it for you. And so that's where your first hint comes from, that this is actually Hatar that's doing it and not necessarily the Nameless or anything else, or this is real in any way. This is really just Hatar and her Falinasi kind of ability to create illusions. So, all right, let's go back to the temple. And we've got a loose Sskeer at this point. I mean, he's just wreaking havoc and beating up Keeve Trennis. In fact, he pins her up against the wall with one hand and is basically choking the life out of her. And the entire time she's trying to plead to him, right? Get to his, plead to the better side of him, plead to that Jedi, plead to the master side of him. And he's just so enraged and he's so lost that Lorna D finally takes matters into her own hands, picks up some kind of a rock or whatever. You can see it there and just wails on him, hits him over the head and takes him out at that point. We get to, and then the funny part is when she does that, I don't have it on here. The next panel, it's Keeve saying, "Why did you do that?" And then Lorna responds back, "Oh no, you're welcome. Don't mention it at all." Like, I mean, just that sarcasm that she has as she was trying to be helpful, because she was basically getting killed, and of course, Keeve didn't want any part of that.
Did you think Lorna was actually helping, or do you think she was just making the whole situation worse?
I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier, where it's kind of like fight or flight for her, and it's about self-preservation. And so, I mean, that's why even when she was telling Keeve, like, "Hey, you should have your lightsaber up," and we didn't talk about this earlier in the comic, but Keeve Trennis didn't want to ignite her lightsaber. She only did after Sskeer attacked her. But Lorna D's like, "No, turn your dang lightsaber on, because you're all that stands between us and this creature, this abomination, literally." That has gone mad, that's trying to kill us at this point. So yeah, I think it's probably more self-servicing than anything else, rather than her being a team player in any way. But what did you think?
Yeah, there was a moment later on where it kind of seemed like Keeve was about to get through to him, and then Lorna D attacks him again, and it's like, well, I guess we'll never know if that would have worked, because she just attacked him again. So
Right.
there were moments when it's like, oh, she's being helpful, and then there were also moments where it's like, okay, wait, give it a minute and let's see if if she can get through to him first.
And he's not out for very long at all. Like, I mean, this is a very quick kind of concussion, because immediately he gets up. He grabs Lorna D by the leku and like throws her across the room. And at this point, it's kind of Keeve just kind of trying to talk to him, saying, "This isn't you. I know it isn't. It's your Magrak syndrome controlling you, making you angry." And she's trying to, again, appeal to him in every possible way. And she finally starts to break through, right? She tries to tell him, like, "You're not a monster. You're a Jedi." And she even pulls out her lightsaber at one point and says, "Look, I have the other half to your lightsaber, because I gave you this," right? That's how close we are, kind of thing. And it's like at that moment, she's finally starting to make some progress and break through. And that's when Lorna D picks up the lightsaber and like rakes him across the back.
Yes.
And cuts him down. So yeah.
Poor
She's just making things worse. I guess your point is well taken there earlier. All right. We'll come back to that in a little bit. We're catching up with, I don't know, one of them. I think it's Tarek at this point, because he's the one that ran off into the woods, but or maybe it's Sarek, I forget now. But he's starting to have illusions as well, surrounded by monsters, one surrounded by Drengir, and this is more illusions, honestly, coming back from Hatar, which we'll get to in a little bit. And while that's going on, there is suddenly this hooded figure that shows up, and we'll learn more about them a little bit. But they're almost kind of coaching Tarek, tell him he needs to focus on his Jedi training and not be afraid and all that. And so you get the sense that, okay, this guy, this person, this entity, whoever it is, has some knowledge of the Force in some way, which is kind of cool, but, not necessarily a Jedi. I never came across as one. Very interesting, of course. And then help Sarek basically free himself to get out of the illusions. I don't think I have issues, or I don't have pictures of that. But at one point, back where Moonshi is, there is a Nameless that finally emerges and comes out and attacks Moonshi, jumps on him. We'll get to his fate in a little bit, but right when it's about to turn around and attack Sarek, suddenly this Nameless is zapped by lightning. And we come to find out that the zapping came from that same hooded figure, who turns out to be Tay Sarek, which is a Sephi, a member of the Guardian of the Wills, and a great throwback to Phase 2. But I'll let you take it from there. What'd you think about seeing him?
Yes. Oh, I was so excited because I love Tae This Tae was one of my favorite characters from Phase 2. So I was so happy. I loved him in especially, we see him a couple times, but the main place where we see him is in the High Republic Volume 2 comics. And I love him because he was very much that type of scoundrel with a heart of gold that
Yep.
usually just always works for me. And I guess some background on him is he was a guardian of the wills, but because he kept getting too emotionally involved in the people around the temple, he ended up leaving because he felt like the guardians of the wills weren't doing enough to
Yeah.
actually help people in the community. And so then he became a thief and had this whole like scoundrel life. So I just love him. He's just like such a fun character. So I was so excited to see him again.
Yeah, same thing. I wasn't expecting this. And I really, honestly, and we'll get to this in the next issue, I wasn't expecting to get the flashback. And it's a large portion of issue number 7. We actually get to go back and see some of the stuff that happened in Phase 2, specifically, of course, around him and why he turned out to be kind of where he is today, right? Because I think when we last left him, he was in that, if I remember correctly, I thought he was in this kind of like, he was in that thieving scoundrel kind of way. And then here he is kind of full circle, still on the light side. He's got a task, right? There's a reason why he's here that we'll get to here in just a little bit. But yeah, I love his sense of humor. I love his dry, like his like deadpan kind of comebacks, and the way he talks to people is so laid back. He's not like your typical Jedi. He's not really your typical kind of, he's almost like, I hate to say a Han Solo, but he is kind of like a scoundrel that is following the light and has, some kind of connectivity to the Force. So he's a very unique character in that sense. But we'll get to the gauntlet though, or the hand of Subusu. I forget the name now, but we'll get to that here in a little bit.
I wrote it down. I'll find it by the time we get to it.
It's in the next. Yeah, I think it's in the next comic here. We'll get to him. But yeah, we get to his reveal, and let's go back to the temple where Lorna is now fighting Sskeer. And there's a number of panels in here where they're just beating the crap out of each other, which is always lots of fun to do. And eventually Lorna loses her lightsaber. And at one point, there's a moment in here. I don't have the image up, but there's a moment in here where I think she either cuts Sskeer's mouth or she's talking about his tongue. And it almost looks like she slices his tongue off. Like, and Sskeer grows back everything almost immediately, right? So it's not a big deal, but it was kind of neat to see that, she was kind of doing stuff to him. It wasn't just a one-sided battle. And he finally gets her cornered. He's about to just strike her down when finally Keeve Trennis jumps in, ignites her lightsaber, stops him from killing it. And it's at that point that he finally starts to remember that, that's his former Padawan. And then, she's trying to get through him, or you can see it right here where she's saying or he's saying Padawan, you were my, and then finally they get the big hug. And so again, we're kind of blitzing through some of this stuff, but she does break through to him and finally gets him to realize who he is, at least temporarily. I mean, he's not 100%. You can see, we'll see bits and shades of him kind of regressing at times, but definitely not where he was, at the beginning of this, the particular Phase 3, as we saw earlier.
Yeah, it seems like it comes and goes without really a rhyme or reason as to whether he's himself or if he's in his kind of deranged mindset.
Yeah. He does remember that he did attack Gunsal Munshi as well. Yeah, we covered that in the last breakdown of the first 4 issues, but at one point he was attacked, and that's how they found out. They knew there was a Trandoshan here because Munshi had been attacked. And, he says he remembers that. He definitely feels sorry that it happened. He's still not really sure exactly why, but he does reveal, and this is kind of the big reveal for this first issue and how it ends, that he's been protecting a small child. And which was shocking because I had no idea this was coming. And so, yeah, it begs a lot of questions now, like, okay, who is the kid? Why is he protecting her? And, it also speaks to like his mindset because we're going to cover it anyways, right? This is a Force-sensitive child who is being followed or being tracked down by Bulan and the Children of the Storm because they're taking these children and they're experimenting on them for different things. And yet Sskeer, in the state that he was in, right, still felt obligated in some way, somewhere deep down inside, he still felt obligated to protect this child. And so that was always, I guess, a hint or a glimmer of hope that he's always still been there, even with the syndrome that he's been suffering through.
Well, and it makes me wonder if it kind of comes and goes in phases, sort of, if maybe he'll have a few days where he's kind of, in that sort of mindset where he's being violent and aggressive, and then maybe it fades for a few days, or if
Yeah.
it's something that just kind of, sort of ebbs and flows. But that's never really confirmed, but this had me wondering that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there were moments in there where he was lucid, and other moments where he was just completely, angry and rampaging. But yeah, interesting that they're this little child is introduced, and on one hand, it makes sense because of the storyline, but it does certainly change the dynamic for Lorna D, as we'll see here in just a little bit, because of all the people that little kid latches onto. Like, you picked the worst, the worst one.
She picked the funniest one.
She did pick the funniest one. I forgot to mention there was one line in that comic too where Lorna said that she was the queen of bad ideas. That is so appropriate, especially when you think about her whole life and everything that she's been through, and it almost feels like she's never really had a break. She had an opportunity and kind of threw it away, but she's not wrong. She definitely is the queen of bad ideas. All right, let's roll into issue number 6, and we're going to learn a lot about Tay Sarek, and it's primarily what this comic's about. But we do open with, Tarek and Sarek seeing him. They've got some suspicions around him, right? They know that he just threw out some forced lightning. They weren't exactly sure because that's how he killed the Nameless. And he's got, this glove on, this artifact. And later on, we're going to learn this is called the Hand of Cyberus. It's a Sith artifact in itself. We'll get into more of that in just a little bit. But they also notice that he's got a Jedi lightsaber. And so this freaks them out. And they're like, holy crap, this guy's probably a Sith, right? There's something really weird about him, especially since he's wielding a Jedi lightsaber. They try to take it from him. And eventually we kind of roll into his flashback, right? He's basically tells them to stop. And we get into a lot of the narrative. And so we're going back now to phase 2, going back into about a year after the Battle of Jedi. And we're here now with on Jeddah. We're at the Convocation building where the Convocation lives, the Convocation of the Force itself is. Let me see. I don't know if I got a picture of that little council. Yeah, you can kind of see them there. A couple different members as well here. But again, we learn a couple things about it, and I'll just kind of run through these and get your thoughts on it. So we learned that, yeah, he was a thief at some point, but he's now a member of the Convocation of the Force. There is a character by the name of Naldi Freewielder that's terrorizing a sector of Jeddah. Tay wants to try to stop him, but he's not forward sensitive, so they kind of deny him, and instead they send the woman on the left-hand side here, whose name is Cyrene. They want her to go instead, and so he gets really upset by this, the fact that he was not picked to head out there and try to stop that Naldi Freewielder guy.
Well, and something in his history too is that it always feels like I mean, just kind of a callback to the issues of the Phase 2 comic that talk about him. It feels like this is a wall that he's repeatedly hitting, and this isn't the same issue he had with the Guardians of the Wills, where he wants to get involved and help and contribute his skills to blah blah blah, but nobody really takes it seriously. It'll either be like, that's not our job, or you're a thief, we don't want you to get involved. So he's like just really frustrated at this point, I think, because he's heard no so many times whenever he wants to get involved and help someone that needs help. So
yeah, no, good point. And we see that. We see the result of that, right? His decision when he's denied here, you can see how hard it hits. And we'll see where, how that transpires and exactly what happens a little bit. And by the way, Vildar is the guy in the back there. That is his, I don't know, were they're partners, but I don't remember if they were actually they were married, or if any of that ever came out in anywhere, really, honestly.
I was actually going to ask you this because I thought when I read this issue, I felt like I had completely missed something major, because I had no idea that they were together until this issue, even though they were in a lot of comics together in Phase 2. So
I don't remember honestly either. I was hoping you remember.
Yeah, I'm wondering if in that year since the year since the Battle of Jeddah, because the Phase 2 comic is around that time. So I'm wondering if in that year maybe the two of them started a relationship and we just didn't see that happen on the page. because that was the best explanation I could come up with. Because
No,
when
I
I
like
saw
it.
that, I was like, "What?" I
Yeah.
didn't see that coming at all.
I like that more than having to admit that I don't remember something that happened. So, yeah, I either I probably did sincerely miss it. There you go. So One Up versus CPU is helping us out too. He says they didn't have anything romantic in phase 2. So
Okay, so
we're
it's
not
not
crazy.
just us.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, see, Albert, it's unlike us to miss something like that.
No, right.
Like,
right.
we would have caught it for sure. We would have caught it. So
Clearly,
okay.
you've not gone back and listened to our past episodes of breakdowns. So they were kind of just frenemies. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, but we do, and we'll find out. There's a hint here, because I don't have it. I think the context is something like, "I'll talk to him when I get home tonight," kind of thing. I'm like, wait, what? How are you gonna? When do you guys live together now? What's kind of going on?
Yeah.
There? So
Maybe we'll get that explained at some point. I don't know.
Yep.
Spin off.
But Tay ends up leaving, and he's really upset. He heads over to the Temple of Kyber, which is where they keep a lot of the old artifacts and, for Sith artifacts, Jedi artifacts, lots and lots of stuff. I mean, Jedi is kind of like the Holy Land, right? For Jedi, especially at this time. And he sneaks into it. And, he's going back to his roots, right? He was a thief before. And so he's like, you know what? I'm going to do what thieves do. And so he breaks in, and we don't know exactly what he's going to do, although we can assume based on what, where he was in the present day. But we know he breaks into that illegally, and then we cut away and go back to finally get to see Naldi Freewelder. And so you can see him there. Now, this guy is a Force sensitive as well. I don't remember what his group was. It's a special sect of Force sensitive users that can manipulate fire in some way. Not really important, but we know that he's out there. He's terrorizing this little neighborhood area. Eventually, Cyrene shows up. She's another character who is which is a Falinassi. So she's able to kind of create the illusions, and that's why you can see there's like multiple copies of her right here. She's using it to her advantage, basically telling him, "Look, you need to get out of town, stand down," kind of thing. And she's confronting him. Eventually, there's a big fire, big breakout. They have a whole battle. Right, we're not going to get into all that. And she's almost basically getting burned here by Naldi as well. When finally Tay shows up, and now Tay is wielding that hand of Sybaris. He's got it on. It's what he stole from the temple. He's got it on. He's using the Force lightning, and he's really doing a pretty good job of keeping up with. I don't have a lot of shots in here, but they have a pretty good one-sided battle that Tay is definitely has the upper hand. But you can clearly see the impacts. Right, it's controlling him. This is going to have some later effects in this comic in just a few minutes here. But he is, he's touched the dark side because it is a Sith artifact, and there is another presence there that is controlling him. So it's a really big gamble, and it's very different from where we see him a little bit later. So I guess you want to chime in on on that before we get into Vildar showing up and kind of setting him in his place.
Well, it's interesting because this artifact, it feels like every time he takes it out, it just allows him to just absolutely decimate whatever his opponent is. I mean, this is a pretty powerful artifact. And I mean, just a couple of scenes ago, we saw him kill the Nameless like it's nothing. Like it took like a second. It wasn't even really a battle that happened. Yep. And then here in this flashback, we're seeing the same thing because, based on the other images that we've seen, his opponent looks pretty powerful, but once he takes this glove out, it's kind of just like it's already over before it's even started. So it's interesting that he's managed to hold on to it all this time, even though so many people are like, you shouldn't have this.
Yeah.
So I was surprised to see that he still had it by the time we get into phase 3. So.
Yep. And he doesn't kill anybody. He doesn't kill anyone with the hand, and he's about to though. I mean, again, we don't have all the panels here, but as you're reading this, you're realizing like, holy crap, he's getting more and more intense. He definitely is about to, he could kill somebody. And that's when Vildar finally shows up, right? He kind of jumps out and stops him, counterattacks him, whatever he needs to do, tells him to kind of snap out of it. I mean, you can tell that he's kind of lost it here. So you can see it in his eyes. There's like lightning kind of coming out of his eyes there at the very top panel there. Eventually he gets through to him and tells him like, take the dang thing off, like take the glove off. And he's able to pull it off, and, they kind of end up going back to, they go back to the council. They let them know what exactly happened. And they have a moment here back at the house when they go back. And this is where Tay is like, I was under the influence, I've touched the dark side, and I think all of that same, what you were talking about earlier, right, where he's just never really had an opportunity to kind of prove himself. He was trying to do the right thing here, but now he's dealing and reeling with this idea that now he's down the path of the dark side. And I love this moment here because it's really Bildar basically telling him, look, anybody can come back, right? Just because you've done some bad things doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad person, and says that there is a way back to the light for him. So,
Well, and something that's interesting though is that if Tay hadn't used the artifact, then what would have happened? I mean, one thing I like about Tay is he's willing to do the ugly thing if it's going to actually do what needs to be done, you
Yeah.
know? And I really like that about him because like the other person that showed up that was fighting him, I mean, she didn't really accomplish anything. I mean, she was just kind of another casualty almost. So the fact that Tay showed up and actually used the glove, I mean, it might not be pretty, but it did resolve the situation.
yeah, that's a good point. One Up says, is this a Darth Ravi artifact? I don't know. Like, that was Darth Ravi. We know so little about him. He's a cool character. I hope they explore him more. He was in one of the one shots. I forget which one now. But I mean, it could be. It's possible, and we know from obviously this comic, but also from like Dooku Jedi Lost and a number of other references that they have a number of artifacts out there that they've housed and they've secured and put away. I would imagine Momin's mask is in there somewhere, right? But it's possible, but I like to think that it could be any number of other Sith that have lived over the millennia that they've got this from. But that's a good callback or call out. Maybe it could be his as well. Okay, let's move into. So we get basically back up to the present time, right? And we get Tay kind of talking to Sarek and Tarek and kind of explaining what's going on. We get more about the Hand of Cerebus. We learn that over the years he's been able to control it. And we clearly see that, like he doesn't seem infected by it. Reading this, and I was worried that okay, yeah, he's saying this, but a couple episodes or issues from now, something's going to go horribly wrong, and he's going to turn on them, or we're going to see the presence of the dark side. But not to spoil anything, but all the way up until the very end, right before this comic stops here, he seems to be just fine. Like I didn't notice any ill effects from him from wearing this Hand of Cerebus. So maybe he has been able to control it. It's pretty powerful that he has. I mean, he's had it for a number of years now, so I guess it does make sense. But this stuff generally doesn't end well for Jedi, right? That do it, even as much as they feel like they are in control of this stuff. At some point, something really bad does happen, right? Because they're tampering with the dark side. But I don't know. Maybe he's the exception. What did you think? Do you think did you pick up anything, and did you walk away from this first series all the way up into issue 10 or whatever, feeling like, yeah, he's good?
I hope he proves everybody wrong, because the way I feel about this is somebody's got to. I mean, this seems like it might be a way to kill the Nameless. So I don't want them to just throw that away. And it might require everybody putting a little trust in him, even though it's a little scary, because his heart seems like it's in the right place. I feel like us as the reader can clearly see that his heart is in the right place. The other characters probably not quite yet, but hopefully he can prove that to them, because I think that it's going to take some kind of a tool like this. I mean, I know that in other High Republic readings recently, we've seen some other ways that could possibly go head to head with the Nameless. I don't want to spoil anything, but it seems like there's some options out there. This is one of the options.
Yep.
So I would like it if he continues to use it. And to me, it does seem like he's mastered it. And I feel like if anybody's going to be capable, I definitely think he's capable. And I just hope everybody trusts him enough to let him keep it and actually let him use the tool that he has.
Yeah. And it could, you're right. Like especially after the series, we don't always get the comic book characters making their way up, moving into the big novels, but this feels like there's an opportunity for him to do that, right? Make his way up into the big novels. Like, and I say that meaning the end of Phase 3, Wave 3 of Phase 3, Charles Soule's novel coming out. We got a couple other ones as well, but yeah, this is one of the options that I think they have on the table now for fighting back at the Nameless, because he's not Force sensitive. He is immune to the Nameless themselves and the power, right? But at the same time, He's got an ability to wield a power the Jedi don't have, would never have, and there are no Sith around here, so we don't even know. Like, I don't want to speculate too much onto this, but maybe there is something special about the dark side itself, right? Force lightning, that is, well, I think it is. Force lightning seems to be very effective at the Nameless, because it really only took one zap from this guy and he killed it, like you said earlier, right? So, it would be fitting too. You've got a character who seems to hit roadblock after roadblock, can't seem to earn trust, can't seem to fit in with certain groups that he wants to be a part of, and yet, maybe this is finally at some point he does make a name for himself, and he does come out to be, redeemed, or be the redeemer in saving, basically the galaxy and the Jedi specifically. I think that would be kind of fitting for him, especially everything he's been through so far. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that would be awesome, especially considering his starting place of, where we see him in phase 2.
Yep.
I think, and we did see him a little bit in one of the YA novels in phase 2, but he was not like a main character. I mean, I think we just very briefly saw him. So I do think, like you're saying, that would be really cool to see him in an actual novel, spend a lot more time with him, maybe see, him really make a big difference, because I definitely think he's capable. And I really like what you pointed out about, comparing like where he started.
Yeah.
I feel like his story is kind of ripe for him doing something big, considering everything that he's been through, and then him kind of popping up again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really hope that happens, because I feel like he's one of those characters that, first of all, is just an easy to love character, which I'm always a sucker for that. And I feel like he's kind of got all the building blocks of being able to really do something big here.
Yeah. While this is all going on, poor little Moonsheet, which I don't have a picture, and hopefully you guys know who I'm talking about. We'll get to him. I do have a picture of him dead later. Sorry, spoiler alert. We're going to cover it tonight.
That was sad.
But this entire time,
out.
Yeah, he's like barely alive after he was the one that was attacked by the Nameless, right? He's barely alive. He's on life support essentially, but he's kind of partially calcified as well. So when I saw that, I'm thinking he's not going to come out of this. But nonetheless, Tay does kind of provide an update that he's barely hanging on here, and they've got to do something here soon for him. And then it's about that time that he's also, the final thing he says is like his reason, his whole mission right now is he is trying to stop Hatar from kidnapping more Force sensitives for the experiments that Bulan is doing. That's when Keeve, Sskeer, and Dee arrive. You can see them together. I mean, it's like, again, another image I thought I would never see, which is kind of cool. But they arrive here as well. They finally make their way back from the temple. And this is where, Sskeer does apologize to Moonshee, even though Moonshee's on the, he's dying. He apologizes and makes peace with, I'm sorry I attacked you, that kind of thing. Says he was only trying to protect the little girl. And then there's a moment in there where Keeve is like, where is she, Lorna? And then Lorna responds back, yes, because I'm the nursemaid now, right? Suddenly she's been slotted into this role of nursemaid. Again, of all people, you've got Lorna D as the surrogate mother now to this child, which I thought was pretty kind of cute and funny. But this is where that moment where she reluctantly tells the girl that we're all surrounded. And she goes, I can't even believe I'm going to say this, by friends, right? Like, really struggling to get that word out. But the very end here, the girl suddenly kind of has a moment of, she's suddenly scared, the Nameless are around, and she does this kind of force push and throws Tarek, or Sarek, I think it's Tarek on this one, but she force pushes him out, and so we get the reveal that she is highly force sensitive, right, to be able to kind of do this, and that's how it ends. So any kind of final thoughts on, I guess, Lorna D., Hatar, or even the little girl that's the Yakombe child that we don't we ever get a name for her? I don't think we do.
I don't think we have one quite yet, but
anyway, it's not in the ones we're covering tonight. But
yeah, it makes me wonder what type of encounters she has had with the Nameless. I know that she's been on this planet running away from the Jedi killer, but even just seeing the dead body of the Nameless is enough for her to kind of not be in her right mind and kind of freak out and lash out with her powers. So I'm wondering what kind of close calls this poor girl has been through. So, I mean, that's really sad to think about, just, what the past few months have probably been like for her on this planet. And And also, I don't know, I'm also interested in the backstory of how, like, how did she get here and how did all these people get in, like, how did Sskeer and Tay Serik both get involved in this? Like, it's, I don't know, it's kind
Yeah,
of an unlikely combination of people that are just on this planet protecting this girl. So, yeah,
yeah, and
I feel
is
like there's a lot there to get into.
yeah, and unfortunately, I don't think we get into that. I'm trying to remember now from the last 4 issues. Again, I don't want to spoil anything, but I don't know that we get a lot of information. We definitely learn some more information about her, but not to that extent, and certainly not, again, why Sskeer was involved. Because when we last saw him, and we covered this in the first 3 or 4 issues, but when we last saw him, he was kind of going down with Starlight Beacon, right? He had
Hmm.
was and suddenly, we suddenly see him now flash forward here, and he's on this temple and he's protecting this girl, and what's the backstory there? And then is there something special about the girl too? I think I have some questions about who she is, and just maybe does she play a more pivotal role later in the next phase of the comic, or maybe in the books themselves? Too early to tell. But yeah, let's talk about the third issue. This is issue number 7, and this is called "The Balm of the Luminous," which as soon as I saw the title, I was like, "Hey, I remember that name." But we're picking up where we left off. Right, she's kind of got force stuff going around her. She's blowing back the wind, and this freaks out Tarek. Like, he sees it and he's like, "Oh my god!" Because I think it's Tay that mentions that because of her race, right? Because she is a Yakombe race, they are they're believed to be naturally aligned with the dark side, and so he's kind of already in freak out mode with everything he's been through, and so he pulls out his lightsaber and tries to he wants to basically subdue her, and that's when Skeer's defense mode kicks in. He ignites his lightsaber because he's still kind of a little out there, but they end up kind of having a battle back and forth until Keeve finally steps in and basically tells them both that they needed to stand down. That's enough from all of you, is basically what she says. I love this moment because, we've gotten to watch the progression of Keeve Trennis. We've got to literally watch her grow up from a small, Padawan child to now here she is forcefully stopping her former master and kind of being the adult in the room about everything, being so level headed. I mean, this is the beauty of being able to tell a story for so many years and so many issues that we kind of get that character development from her. And it's not as deep as a book, I get that, but it is kind of fun to watch and see clear examples of this where she has taken more of a leadership role and kind of, again, being that adult in the room.
Well, and also, I mean, something else she has on her plate too, in addition to just being an adult when it comes to Sskeer, is Tarek and Sarah are both kind of getting a little on edge as
Yeah.
well.
And they've been that
Like
way
there's
for a
several
while
times,
now. Yeah.
yeah, like there's several times just in issues even leading up to this one where one of them does something that's a little bit like, hey, you shouldn't have done that. That was really messed up.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even earlier in this issue, when Sarah like flings the animal off of Tarek and then the two of them are fighting, like they're having problems with each other. And as a result of that, well, it's kind of hard to tell which came first, the problems with each other or them lashing out
Yeah.
and not really being the Jedi way. It almost feels kind of like a cycle. But Keeve is having to deal with them too and be like, okay, stop doing really harsh mind probes on people. Stop
Right.
flinging animals. Like, stop. Like, everybody settle down. So poor Keeve is like trying to deal with everybody right now.
Yeah. And to that point, there's a moment a little bit later where they realize that all of them are broken in some way, which I thought was one of the better moments, or one of the best moments, honestly, of particularly this whole series, but just that acknowledgement. And so that she's kind of highlighting some of that a little bit later. We'll get to that here in a second because it is pretty important. But yeah, while this is going on, the little girl is, frightened. And who does she run to, right? She runs over to Mama Lorna D, of all people, right? She's seen all these people fight and everything else. And she runs over into the arms of Lorna D, which again is just, I mean, like, who would have thought this image that we would ever see this image of her? And it seems very sincere. Like, it doesn't seem like Lorna is like, begrudgingly having to comfort a child, right? She feels like, she is. And, you could argue that she sees some of herself in the child, and being scared and having all these bigger things at play, because we know that she was in the middle of all that because of where she grew up. But we won't get into Lorna D's background, but I did really enjoy this. But this is where Keeve mentions, she says, look at us fighting amongst ourselves while a child seeks comfort in the arms of the woman we say is our enemy, a woman who is killed without mercy, terrified half the galaxy. What does that say about us? What have we become, right? Again, acknowledging that there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of fighting going on, inner fighting going on. They are broken in a lot of different ways. And, the child recognizes, and of all the people that she's run into the one that arguably should be the worst of all of them. I think it was a really good moment here.
I also like it that when Keeve said that, she's also including herself in that
Exactly.
too. Like,
Yeah.
she's not acting like she's, in some way above everybody else. Even though she's trying to keep everybody in line, she recognizes that she also has contributed to this issue. I mean, she is the one that disobeyed orders, stole the ship, and came here,
Yeah.
So she definitely isn't discounting her role in this. So I appreciated the self-awareness on her part.
Yeah. And this is like the saddest part, because while all this is going on, they forgot about Gunral Munshi, who's like laying there.
This killed me.
Calcified. And then like Tay, I think it's Tay or someone steps in and is like, oh, hey, by the way,
it's
Oberlin. Yeah,
Yeah.
Oberlin breaks in. He's like, by the way, guys, sorry to interrupt, but Munshi just died. So I don't know if you want to come see him. And I'm like, oh my God, that poor dude is like, nobody decided to take care of him while they were arguing. So maybe that was a part of it, or the whole reason behind it. They were just so, consumed by themselves and the inner fighting that they just didn't even think about someone's loss of life, someone that was just sitting there dying, bleeding out, or not literally, but bleeding out, calcifying before their eyes.
Well, something about that just really hit me because, I mean, it's not like anyone could have changed the outcome.
Sure.
But it's just the fact that they didn't even realize. That just made me so sad.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. It's just the way that was written. It just really got me.
I'm not laughing.
And then you have the
sadistic.
depressing picture.
I know. He's got like this smirk on his
gosh.
face, and you got Oberlin saying, I didn't even feel him go. I don't know if there was anything in that, but yeah, I mean, the Jedi who are so connected with life and light, and they didn't even feel him pass. I don't know, it was just sad all around. This poor character.
They're just being, it just comes across like they were just being so self-absorbed in their own little squabbles that they just missed something important that was happening.
So they end up burying him or burning his body that night. You can see it here. There's Sskeer and the little girl. They're kind of watching it. And while while they're doing that, this is where Tay comes up to Sskeer. I mean, he knows there's something going on with Sskeer, that he's got a lot of anger issues right now happening. And he introduces himself, because they haven't fully officially met. He mentions that he went ahead and buried the Nameless. Likely he did that because it was terrifying, the little girl seeing this dead Nameless there, even if it was dead. So he went and buried that. But he says, I can help with the anger issues, and then takes out these wraps of the Luminous, which again were first, I think officially first mentioned in Dooku Jedi Lost. We saw them used there, but they are a way to kind of like pacify you and really kind of help you reconnect with the light, in some way, which is why they're called the bandages, or the balm of the Luminous, the bandages of the Luminous. And so it was a nice moment. I liked it. There's a whole little saying here. All this, the one is greater than the others. Together they unite, restore, center, renew. There's a little thing that he's saying while he's putting the bandages on. And all that was pulled right out of Dooku Jedi Lost, almost, word for word they were in there. So it is kind of cool that it was just a callback. But all right, so that night, everybody's sleeping. You can see Keeve here. She's up. She's still struggling with everything that's going on, trying to make sense of it all. Like, what do we do now? What are our next steps? And while everybody's sleeping, suddenly this hand comes out of the ground. And you heard the scratching that was going on before, but essentially what's happened now is they've got this Nameless who has basically come out of the ground. And I thought, when I saw this, I did get hooked, line, and sinker into it. I thought for sure this thing had come up from the dead. And I'm thinking, why didn't they burn this thing? Like, they buried it because it obviously had to come up from the ground for the story. But yeah, I would have burned the sucker, not just buried it. But nonetheless, it does pop up, and there's moments in here where everybody suddenly is starting to turn calcified, and I was like, okay, wait a second. No, this can't be it. This has got to be something else going on. And sure enough, that's not really what's happening. This is an illusion by Hatar, who we finally get a picture of. I mean, one of the most beautiful characters ever drawn down there, Hatar.
Oh, God.
10 for 10 as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, she is the Tallahassee who's able to kind of create illusions. And so while that was going on, while everybody was sleeping, she used an illusion to distract Keeve Trennis, and then was able to grab the girl and, scale this little wall here and take off. But now let me pause there. Anything you want to add to what's going on here?
Yeah, it's funny that, see, when the Nameless came out of the floor, I didn't even put it together like, oh, it's the dead one that they buried earlier that resurrected. I thought that it was just a different Nameless that for some reason was burrowing underground.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh my gosh, okay, there's more. And then once I realized it was all a hallucination, it's like, oh, okay, well.
Yeah.
But now that you said that, I'm glad I didn't realize, or at least put it together the same way that you did about it being a Nameless coming back to life. Because if they introduced that the Nameless can just come back to life, I think I would be so frustrated.
Right. Yeah. No one's ever truly gone, if you will, in Star Wars. One has a question, says, one of the twins was healed from calcification in part 1. That was a thing, right? Yes, it was Tarek or Sarek. The way I interpreted that, and I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've read that. There was something about their bond, their link, that allowed them to kind of heal and kind of gave them an out. Because, I forget which one it was, but yeah, you're right. Like that guy was about to die. Like he had been attacked by the Nameless. He was calcified. For all intents and purposes, I thought he was a goner. Like I thought for sure. And I honestly, just to kind of, not to sidestep too much here, but Tarek and Sarek have been on like death's bed so many times. Like I thought, okay, this is the issue where one of them's going to die. And they've been in such precarious, positions and situations that you think they're going to die, and yet they do, one of them lives on. Now, I don't want to spoil anything, but I think one of them finally does die later down the road. But man, it felt like it was a long time coming. But yes, one was able to kind of snap out of it, and they never really gave a whole lot of explanation. I think it was chalked up to kind of like their symbiotic relationship and their bond in some ways. But
whenever Albert says, I don't want to spoil anything, that means if you don't want a spoiler, you should mute for like
mute immediately
10 seconds. Yep. Yeah. Because he's about to spoil something.
Yeah. Well, and I wouldn't normally do this, but we're kind of behind on this, and those issues have already been out. So
yeah, I think most people have already read it. We're the behind ones.
Yeah.
So fair enough.
But so anyways, we get to see her, and she's kind of she's grabbed the kid, and she's running off. And before she does, Tay tries to shoot her with the hand of Cerebus here, and Lorna steps in to protect the child. Essentially, she's about to fire this thing on and there's a high risk of hitting the kid, of course. So she does. She ends up stopping Tay, and before he tries to hit Hatar with the hand of Cerebus, Hatar gets away. Of course, while all this is going on, they're completely distracted. Sskeer ends up running after her at some point. He goes after Lorna D, or he goes after he can't find him, so she comes back, and he basically blames Lorna D. And you can see him right now. He's kind of standing over her, yelling at her because she stopped Ty from using the hand to potentially shoot and kill Hatar before Hatar got away. And let's see, this is where Lorna basically says, look, we're all broken, right? Kind of thing. She almost literally says that they're all broken. And she's not wrong. It's absolutely true. Keeve then wants to know what Lorna is trying to do, right? They want to know exactly what, her plan is. And on top of trying to stop the kid, I think because of the lightning or from being hit, she does explain that she's put a tracker on the child, and this is going to be a better situation because now they can go back and find the base, the space station, wherever it is that Bulan is at, where they're taking all the kids, and there's, so I don't know. Again, some of this feels self-serving, but this is a lot of what she does is self-serving, but this was kind of like, okay, this is interesting. This is not something I would have expected Lorna D to do. She does seem like she is trying to get to the bottom of this, and she doesn't want it to continue anymore. And so she's not trying to, cut the proverbial head of the snake off. She's trying to cut the whole snake in half, or whatever analogy you want to use there, right? She wants to go back to the main source, which is Bulan here, and track him down.
Well, and something I'm wondering about her, now I could be proven wrong, but something I'm wondering is it kind of seems like whenever a child is at stake, she seems like she's able to put the self-serving stuff aside. And the reason I say that is because earlier in this issue, when when Keeve asks Lorna, "Where's the kid?" and Lorna's like, "Well, I'm not the nursemaid." She makes a joke
Yeah.
and is being all sarcastic. But in the same issue later on, when the girl runs to Lorna for comfort, Lorna doesn't hesitate. She
Yep.
doesn't make a joke about it. She's not sarcastic. She just comforts the child. So I'm wondering if, whenever there's like other people involved, especially other Jedi, that's when Lorna's very sarcastic and kind of like being more self-serving. But when it's actually an innocent child, maybe she's able to kind of put all that aside and
Yeah.
actually help the innocent person. But I don't think she sees the Jedi as innocent. So maybe that's kind of the difference.
Yeah, you're right. I think she's looking at this as this truly is just a victim of everyone else. And they're not Jedi. This is an innocent child. She probably, again, sees herself in that, or she can relate to the fact that, what it feels like to be a child and lost and alone and scared and, in the midst of bigger things that are happening that you have no control over. I think all of that resonates with her. But she does say this line right here, and I picked this panel out because I love this so much. She says, or maybe when they're kind of questioning her motives and why she's suddenly trying to be good, right? They're very skeptical about it. She says, or maybe, just maybe, I'm the laser brain who listened when someone told her she could change, that she could be better. Although, let's be honest, in present company, that isn't exactly difficult. Offense very much intended. And so what she's doing is calling back, and I believe it was Avar Chris, I think, when they were, there was a moment there where, she had an opportunity. She was kind of on the good side. Like they were trying to convince her to swing over, to do good. She had those moments with Opal Rancisis, who was kind of like there with her and helping her to be a better person long ago, right? But she's had people in her life that have come in and have almost tried to intervene and have seen the light in her and have tried to kind of, extrapolate that and nurture it and feed it and nourish it. And it's just, for one reason or another, it never really went anywhere. And she kind of went back down the old ways, if you will. But yeah, when she says this, and especially what she just did, she's thinking bigger picture. Again, this is part of it that I feel like, okay, well, maybe she is turning a new leaf. And I think we're always going to be skeptical because of who she is. And I think that's fair until she proves otherwise. And that's probably a long road. But, moments like this, this is good for her. This is good for character development. I've always loved Lorna D, and this is what I really wanted from her, and so I'm just glad we're starting to see it now.
To me, it's hard to believe that this couldn't be genuine. I don't know, just the way that she's saying it and the moments where we see where she seems like she's being more sincere versus the moments where she's pulling out the sarcasm. There does seem to be enough consistency there to where I would be shocked if this wasn't genuine and real. So
Yeah.
I really do feel like she's moving towards, maybe she'll never call herself being in the light or whatever,
Right,
but
right.
I mean, I do think she's at least moving towards the direction of wanting to help innocent people that need it.
Yep. I guess in the scheme of like calling people by their alignments, she is leaning more into like the chaotic good type of character at this point, right? More than she was on the evil side of things, which she definitely toyed with for some time there. And then, of course, this is where Keeve actually takes a page from Lorna D and says, look, we're all going to try to do better at this point, right? We all need to try to do better at this point. And so that's kind of where their little story ends before we get into the final moment here, where we're on Tragor Station and we see Hatar bring the child over to the experiments that are going on here. You can see there's vats with Nameless all in them. You've got this crazy looking thing that's the most disgusting thing. It looks like something out of a Tim Burton movie of sorts.
Yeah.
But lots of experiments going on. And they hand over, and this little guy's name is Reek, by the way. He's got experiments being done on him as well. And of course, this all ends with the girl being handed over to none other than Bulan. All right. He says the work is all that matters, for the glory of the Nihil, for the glory of the storm. And so it ends there. So it ends with all roads leading to some kind of a confrontation with Bulan, which has been a long time coming, right? He's been this character that's been very involved in the comics, and he does make appearances in the main adult novels as well. So it's good. It's great that we finally get some kind of closure, and we kind of reconnect with Bulan in a way, and we're going to get a whole lot of him here in the next few comics as well. But how'd you feel like it ended? And then we'll put a bow on this for the night. But I guess How did you feel like this issue ended, and how excited are you to see Bulan? Because he is kind of one of the creepier characters that we don't really get to see a lot of in the novels.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's a very stressful cliffhanger. I mean, there's fun cliffhangers and then there's stressful cliffhangers. I'm worried about this child. I mean, it's still Star Wars, so I have a feeling she's going to be okay in the end, but I'm really worried about what she's going to go through now that she's been delivered to Bulan. So I'm hoping they rescue her very quickly because it sounds like this poor girl has already been through enough already, given the way she reacted to the dead Nameless.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Bulan, I hate him so much. I mean, they've done a really good job at making me just really hate him. He seems horrible.
He's pure evil. He's pure evil.
Yeah, I'm nervous about what he's gonna do. But I mean, I guess they achieved what they set out to achieve in writing that character. I got to give it to him.
Yeah, and he's very dedicated. He's very loyal to Marchion Ro and to the Storm. You can see he proudly wears the robes and the emblems, and he's got a. I mean, if we know the background, he's almost kind of indebted to Marchion Ro for saving him all those years back when he was younger. And with Marchion Ro, that was one of the first people he wanted to go release and find because he just knew how important he was to what Marchion wanted to do, which of course is the Children of the Storm. All those crazy experiments that he's been doing the sick experiments that he's been working on, right? This is all stuff that Marchion Ro really loves. That's how he feels. That's how he gets his power, and that's certainly how Bulan gets his power. But you're right. I hate this guy in a good way. And well, I won't spoil anything. And I'm not gonna say anything else. I won't say anything else. But
everybody mute.
No, we're going to see more of him, of course, in the next few issues. But yeah, overall, again, it was fun to revisit the comics, and especially after the Acolyte fallout, be able to kind of go back to these characters and just pure escapism, the High Republic escapism at that right, because I really enjoy this era. I've enjoyed this era of Star Wars storytelling, and Cavan Scott is one of the gems as far as I'm concerned in terms of what they do with their writing, whether it's novels and comics. And again, like we talked about, being able to kind of come back and make references to things and make it feel kind of one true holistic kind of playground in this era is a really special thing. But any final thoughts from you before we go?
Yeah, I mean, really, I feel like you nailed it. I love the way this series is going. I love these characters that they've built through these comics. I'm hoping that we get to see some of them in the novels more because I feel like these are such great characters that I would like to spend some more time with them. Because, in a comic, there's only so much time that you have. That's just the nature of the medium. So I'm hoping that these characters get translated into some other areas so we can kind of dive a little bit deeper into them at times.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. I'd love to see them. I mean, a lot of these guys are all tapped out, and they've got projects upon projects, and they've got other stuff they're working on that has nothing to do with Star Wars. And I, applaud them and definitely understand where they're coming from. They want to do other things as well. So it does make sense, but they've done a really good job of creating some of these characters. And to your point, it would be nice to kind of see more of them later down the road. Let's see. I think there was a question that came up, and I just want to touch on it. I think it was from one up. It says, are the Children of the Storm Force users, or did Bulan find a way for them to use their powers without the Force? I think they're Force sensitives. That's how I've, of course, read it. But what you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I took it as that they are Force sensitive and that they were deliberately looking for Force sensitive children to do these experiments on.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about that is earlier in these issues, you do see one of the Children of the Storm walking the Nameless with a leash. So it's like, well, if they're Force sensitive, why are the Nameless not feeding on them? Why are they able to tolerate the presence of the Nameless? So there's got to be something there that I think is yet to be revealed. So I'm looking forward to finding out how exactly all that works, because it is, I mean, you're right that it does kind of go against what we're used to the Nihil doing, which is killing all Force users. But I guess it's kind of like, well, if we have a way that we can use them, then we're going to take that opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and I wouldn't put it past Bulan, of all people, to find some way to genetically alter midichlorians or whatever it is, suppress the aspects of the Force that the Nameless eat or impact, You know, again, I'm theorizing and going really tinfoil hat theory here, but you know, yeah, if anybody's going to do something like that, it's Bulan. So maybe he did find a way to do that and not make their own people succumb to the power of the Nameless. Yeah, that could be a reason why as well.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, we'll end it there. I want to say thank you to everybody who showed up in the live chat tonight. One Up versus CPU, Skywalker's Academy, Rafi Shoots, Alex. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. And Laura and I will come back and do the next, I think it's the next four issues or whatever it is. 3 issues. I forget now.
The next handful.
I think it's 3 total. Is that right?
I believe so. I could be miscounting. So
Yeah, but it'll
don't
wrap
quote me
up.
on that. But
It'll wrap. I think it's 3. And that'll take us to issue number 10, which wraps up at least for this particular moment. Again, it'll carry over into 2025. And when that comes out, we'll cover those as well. So, yeah, I guess final things. Thursday, we'll be doing the Legacy of the Acolyte show. Sunday, we'll be doing our top 3 moments of the Acolyte Season 1. If there's enough news, we'll try to sneak in a way station as well, because we're due for that. It's been about 2 weeks since Ed and Fred were on. We'll try to sneak that in as well. And then Laura and I are going to work on trying to plan some way to do Temptation of the Force here. We want to definitely talk about that book. So we'll get that on the books as well. But Lauren, any final words before we get out of here?
I think you covered it. I'm excited to talk about Temptation of the Force finally. So I know we're overdue for that one. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. It's going to be a fun show. We'll get into all the nitty gritty on that one, and some of our favorite chapters, which are a little spicy. We need a spice meter like rating for some of those as well. So let's try to figure that figure out a way to work that into the breakdown. as
Yeah,
well.
I'll have to take a look and consider that rating for
Yeah.
that one.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks so much again. We'll see y'all here on Thursday.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.